Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I want to talk about the signing of Lenny Yoro. The completion of that, we'll talk about sales, we'll talk about the midfield, we'll talk about the fullbacks and everything else, covering what we went over in yesterday's live and a little bit more in a simpler and straightforward format. And in case you did miss yesterday's live, I'm going to play the intro again for Lenny Yoro.
Lenny? Lenny? Lenny?
It's just too good. It's just too good. It's just too good to not keep watching. The fact that we have signed Lenny, and as it's gone round now, my official name for him, Lenny fucking Yoro. Okay, so we have Lenny Yoro, the number one target at center back, an unmissable generational talent for Manchester United to be at the right center back position. Partner Lisandro Martinez, that's where he will play. Yeah, he's the one. And the nice part about this whole deal as well, today he signed his contract. He doesn't have to take a holiday. He's already taken his holiday, so he should get minutes in the preseason. He could be on the U.S. tour, and we'll get to start working in. Now, with Lisandro Martinez is, of course, not back, but I think we'll see him partner Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire, who Harry Maguire was, again, back today in full training, so that would be interesting to see. I have a strong feeling it'll be Harry Maguire partnering Lenny Yoro until Lisandro Martinez comes back. Harry has, of course, played plenty of left center back. He also is needing fitness, and I think that is a good chance that Harry Maguire will stay this summer at this point in time. So that'll be good to see. We'll have to start working on our stuff, our chants, our everything for Lenny Yoro. I was thinking about it as the regen. It's not to be an insult, but you know, he didn't join the Champions League club like Rafael Varane, and you know, you got the Champions League Varane. So yeah, I was thinking we should get the Europa League Euro. It kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit. It'll work. It'll work for now, and he can upgrade to Champions League Euro a little bit later. But for now, he's chosen the Europa League Reds over the Champions League Madridistas. So, big win. Very excited. His announcement should come pretty soon. Contracts are signed. Nothing else to worry about on that front. So let's move on to sales. Now that we have Lenny Yoro in and we have Joshua Zirkzee in, we need sales. If we estimate that our budget is around that 70 to 75 million pre-sales, well, we've spent 60 million euros up front. Now, there's some difference in terms of the prices when it comes to Lenny Yoro. Some are reporting 50 million euros, but in England, it's all being reported as 60 million. And I think some of that comes down to what might be included in those costs. I cannot say this for 100%, but if we're paying as a part of this a decent amount of agent fees, then it may be a little bit different in terms of how it's reported. Either way, I would take that 60 million euros number to be accurate, 52 million pounds. So we've spent somewhere in the range now of about 85 million pounds, 100 million euros to get these two in the door. Now, we have a little sales like Willy Campwala, Alvaro Fernandez, and a few other little things where there are good profits that probably cover that. Now, we have very shortly completing the sale of Mason Greenwood, who arrived in France last night and is set to sign, and it will be done in the next 24 hours probably. Given that, we will receive about a 20 million profit. That does help. That should allow us to make an offer somewhere, but it may be limited how much we can offer. Because, again, even with sales, when you make the profit, you get it all at once, and technically that's the amortization of a 100 million transfer. You don't get that credit every single year for the sale, so realistically, when you're selling a 20 million player, you're probably thinking that gives you the ability to do a 30 to 40 million player to bring in terms of balancing things well. So we may be able to make an offer there. but it's probably not going to be enough to get in, a center back that we want. It's not necessarily going to be enough for a Matthias de Ligt or certainly a Gerard Braithwaite. So we will need to move on probably additional players, mostly because we don't have the money to make suitable offers for players that we want just based on that sale alone due to the prices. Now, we'll talk about like the midfield, forwards, etc., all of that. But realistically, if we want another center back, then yes, we're going to have to move on to Victor Lindelof, get a little bit more profit, get some more wages off the books, and those two sets of wages coming off the books and a little bit of profit should then fund the ability to make another purchase. So we're looking at sales now, and I think now you could consider that United are mostly in a sell to buy position. Maybe not in the midfield, which I'll touch on in a moment, but they definitely are, for the most part, needing to sell to buy. So Lindelof, there's interest in Turkey for sure, and probably a few other places as well, that we will need to see if they follow up on. And we will also need to see if we get a decent offer, but also need to make sure we can get a replacement that we want in on a decent price, because I don't think even if they sell Lindelof, they want to overpay. So could they sit on Lindelof a little bit? Maybe. The other factor is potentially that kind of plays into the whole preseason dynamic, is that we do want to be able to utilize our first team and have a good preseason coming up. Well, prior to signing Lenny Yoro, we really only had Maguire and Evans, of course, because we've let go of Kambuala. We just signed Evans. He's not intending to play again a lot this year, so we really need Yoro to be in there so that we can be playing Maguire and Yoro in preseason to actually get some of the dynamics we might have in the first team and work on our improvement. So part of it is sometimes there's the aspect of if you sell the player before you have replacements in, it can throw off your whole preseason planning and training, and that's just a matter of timing, and it does happen. So we'll see if Lindelof kicks up now. Scott McTominay has returned from international break and from his holiday, and we'll definitely have discussions with the club, and I expect to have some news on shortly, where he intends to go, what he intends to do, what his plans are. But they're definitely fielding and looking at potential offers for him. I think that United would be happy to keep him, or Ten Hag would be happy to keep him for sure. And but it's really going to come down to his role, because I don't think they're going to want to give him a significant contract, and with this many minutes and this kind of thing, and so he may not be satisfied with the role that is on offer, as we kind of expect. And that's kind of what I expect to happen, is that he explores what's out there. He's already had people looking on his behalf, and if Fulham can come in with another good offer, or West Ham or someone like that, then if it looks good to him, then he will probably go. Now, that would definitely allow us to make a big purchase in the midfield. I say big, make a significant purchase in the midfield. In the fullback position, as discussed, West Ham have opened talks over Wan-Bissaka, who is definitely open to that move. United will want to get an offer of around £20 million or so. And again, in this situation where he's the only one left, he's the only right back at the club at the moment, senior-wise, because Dalla won't be back probably till after the U.S. tour. They really do need to figure out some replacements so we can have players to play with in preseason as well, and not start the season with any kind of issues. So that could take a little bit of time, I imagine. We'll talk about the potential replacements a little bit later, but West Ham have opened those discussions, and there's a pretty decent chance he can leave, as they kind of prioritize him as a target. Harry Maguire, as I said, I think is more likely to stay. Shaw, of course, staying. Casemiro, the issue is still of interest, and I think that is the problem at the moment in terms of the midfield, is not being able to move in the midfield because we don't have a lot of space in there. And Casemiro, the interest just isn't there from Saudi. They're not yet come in for him. And we're still hoping, still expecting, still thinking they might, but it does not seem quick. So this is one we're just going to have to keep an eye on, because without them coming in from, there's not really a route for Casemiro to go. And that is an issue. That will be something that holds us back from being able to do as much business as we want there. So we'll see, what happens in that vein. On the forward side of things, there's no real progress on selling anybody else. Sancho is the only real forward left where we'd consider a sale. Aside from Facundo Pellistri, who could definitely go to Spain, there's some interest there, and maybe on like a Kumbuala type of deal. Nothing has changed on the Sancho deal as of yet. There's no progress in terms of offers or anything like that coming in. So sales front, really we're talking about Scott McTominay where he goes, Wan-Bissaka where he goes, and Lindelof. And that is going to open up signings in each of those areas if these players are sold. And they're all kind of actively fielding interest and having clubs inquiring and asking about them now. So it's going to be time to see if we can get offers that are of a requisite level and go ahead. But those are kind of the key players we need to see move now before we can really make any more significant purchases. In the midfield, I wanted to talk about Sofiane Amrabat. Obviously, as I said for a long time, I'd not really heard any plans to keep him, and that, in fact, that we wouldn't be keeping him. And then there'd been a number of reports that maybe they would, maybe they hadn't decided yet. And when I asked about it, I gave what the answer was, which was sort of confusing to me, which is maybe you can make up the numbers or something like that. And I get that aspect of it because you've lost him, essentially, and you don't really have much money at the moment. So technically, he could make up the numbers again behind Casemiro, but that means you're running back the midfield exactly as you were last year, and I don't see how that's plausible. But that was the answer I'd got. As I continued to check on it and ask on it, I'm not getting any sort of impression at all that United intend to sign him. So there was talk from Fabrizio Romano about a decision this week on that. I'm not hearing any impression to sign him. So if they do, and if United do end up now buying him this week, then I can just say that I don't know, that I'm obviously missing something on this, and it's outside the view of the information I have, but the people that I've spoken with, I'm still not getting any impression that they intend to sign him. They are looking at midfielders. The problem is when you hear the discussions about like Ugarte is still of interest, and they would get him in. I believe they would sign him. Problem is the cost and not being able to move Casemiro at the moment. I don't think they value him at 55, 60 million euros for sure. They would absolutely take him if a loan plus certain options and obligations were available. They absolutely would. And part of the problem is before making any sales, they kind of have to do that because he's essentially got to be in the Amrabat role where we could only afford a loan last year. And that continues to be the case, even though I think he would play a lot more. So it's a tricky situation, and I think that's part of the kind of disagreement about, not disagreement, but not sure where things are at, is that we don't have the money to buy an expensive midfielder. Ugarte is of interest, but they aren't sold on him at 60 million. They probably need to in the end. They don't want to spend huge on him, and then in the end not be able to get a second one this year or next year when they need it. We need sales. So it's a bit of a tangle at the moment, but there is interest, and they would sign him. And I think that if they could get a reasonable deal or a loan with the conditional obligations, then it still will happen, even potentially without sales on that loan side of it. But it would be a lot easier if they did get sales. So if not, then I think they'll be exploring other Amrabat type deals. Is there another player out there? I think Ugarte fits in that. Like, they'd be happy to loan him and see how it goes and then potentially buy him. And then, but otherwise, they'll look at some other loan options. They'll look at some other loan options similar to Amrabat, and then they tried that previously too. They tried to make a loan post buy for like Fofana, for Palacios, for a few other players. So I think they'll explore in that, and I think that doesn't really suit a lot of the names that we've discussed. Like, João Gomez and Yulman and obviously João Neves and all of that. So those are unlikely. There's been some little talk of Zubamendi. United have been watching him for a long time. Obviously, he'd be an incredible signing, but I think he'd be very expensive, and I'm not sure whether he would come out of Spain. So for that one, they would have to sell. And so I think it's kind of it is a little bit of a mess. But I think it's just a tangle. They need to sort McTominay out to see if they're going to sell him, to know what budget they have. They need to really see if they can get Ugarte's price down, or if they could do it on a loan plus conditional obligation. And they need to see if anybody comes in for Casemiro. But then they need to decide on all this in the next 7 to 10 days, so we have something, in the midfield. So I think that's the next major decision in there. At center back, I think it's pretty straightforward. If we can sell Lindelof, then we'll look to see if we can make another move for Braithwaite or De Ligt or someone else as a left-sided center back. From a forward standpoint, I think our business is mostly done. Ahmad, a long time ago I mentioned he might be set for a new contract. I think that'll be discussed at the end of the window, but he is set to have an important role. That was reported, and I believe that to be the case. Is an important player for United. So you've got Rashford, Sancho, Xerxes, Højlund, Garnacho, Ahmad, and Antony in the team right now, and there's not really any progress at the moment on letting anybody of those go. That's a lot of players, and I think that we're probably going to mostly stand pat there and put the budget elsewhere, barring some crazy change. But it is a lot of players, and I think it's enough for United this year. A lot of young players, a lot of talent, a lot of ways to mix and match all of those in together. So I'd expect we don't make more signings in the forwards position at this point in time. I'm not expecting it. And when I've asked about Tony and Calvert-Lewin and all that, the interest is there, but not really. Like, there's nothing happening. There's nothing really active at the moment in that respect. On the fullbacks front, as I mentioned in the live yesterday, there's definitely there is interest, or at least there's been scouting or getting of information on Kadioglu from Turkey, but I don't know if it goes beyond that. There are other clubs interested in him as well. The right back market is a little bit tricky for sure. That was one of the reasons that they hadn't really been heavily actively selling Wan-Bissaka, is because, as I understood it, they were not super impressed with the fullback market in general. And it's kind of a weird problem in football where there's not actually that many great fullbacks. And a same reason on the left side why I think they're hoping they have a center back who can cover on that left back side. But there is some interest there. I don't know if it goes anywhere, if it ever formalizes or turns into anything at this point in time. If that big offer came in for Wan-Bissaka, then I think at that point they would have to look at that. But they will need that 20 million plus, and for him to want to leave and go in order for that to happen. What was I going to say here? The other name, obviously, Jeremy Frimpong from Manchester, knows a lot of the guys there. Obviously, he knows the City people. We have Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada. There were discussions in the past about him. There were discussions in the past about him, and he's actually had discussions with people at United before, and probably could join if we pushed for it. The issue is he's quite expensive. 34 million pounds for a backup is not, and he's not really a fullback, is not necessarily in line with what United are looking to do in that area right now. So I don't see that one moving forward at the moment, but it's certainly an option if they get a big offer for Wan-Bissaka and they decide they want to go there, then that is possible. Right now there's nothing active on it, but just one to watch. But right now nothing active. So it's a little bit, there's some tangles now, and I spent a long time kind of explaining all the different things that could go on about in the live yesterday. But what I can say for today is discussions will be held over McTominay. West Ham have opened talks over Wan-Bissaka. United are looking more likely to sell Lindelof. Maguire could certainly stay, and he would certainly be open to it. And they have that extra year they can trigger with his contract as well. Let's see. And then I'm still not hearing any plans to sign Amrabat at this point in time. They would be interested in moving forward on Ugarte should they be able to get the fee in a reasonable range or get it to a loan and obligation standpoint. If they get a sale of Scott McTominay or Casemiro, then that opens the door for potentially more possibilities. If not, then they're likely, and they can't get that price on Ugarte, then they're probably going to be exploring other options, which they're probably doing now, to see if there's any young or loan type options that they can get in to see how it goes. Unlikely that there's more forward signings. There's been no real progress as of yet on anything with Sancho. Ahmad will stay. And on the fullbacks front, they weren't super excited about different fullback options out there, and especially because they have their two nailed on starting fullbacks, that is makes the market a little bit more difficult. But if that offer came in for Wan-Bissaka, then they would explore it, and Karioglu and Frimpong are probably the only two kind of semi-solid names at the moment there. So I think that about wraps up where things are at as of now. Lot to do on that front. They're going to be heading out shortly for what do you call it? They're going to be heading out soon-ish for the tour, and so they need to move players on and kind of get some things done, at this point in time. So yeah, that's what I have for today's video. I'll probably just try to produce some fun different type of videos and things like that. Again, thank you all for watching. Thank you for the 20,000 subscribers and everything. It really does mean a lot to me to be able to do this and keep things going for the future. I also posted a ticket giveaway, partnered up with United again for official kind of competition for a ticket giveaway for all 3 US tour dates. So if you don't have tickets, go enter. You might as well. I will be in Los Angeles next week on Saturday, and I hope to see you there. I will probably be at South Carolina the following week as well. So, yes, that's what I've got. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next video.